Have just tonight stumbled upon evidence of shame, if not accountability, at least a little bit of shame in American politics. It's so unfamiliar, it feels like we are covering something in a foreign language. But I swear this really happened today. Knock me over with a feather. I swear this happened. All right. You might remember early this year, we learned that Ben Carson, who had been a Republican presidential candidate. He ran against Trump in the primaries. Then he endorsed Trump for president after he dropped out of the primaries. Then Trump named Ben Carson to his cabinet, named him Secretary of HUD, Housing and Urban Development. You might remember early this year that we learned that Ben Carson, upon moving into HUD as the head of that new agency, he decided that he needed a $31,000 table for his office. Remember that? It was kind of like a dining set. I'm not clear why you'd need a dining set in your office if he dines in his office. I don't know. I dine in my office, but I do so over the keyboard, unfortunately. But Ben Carson wanted a $31,000 table to dine. The way that weird little scandal shook out is that a career official at HUD told Ben Carson that he couldn't do that. She was like, listen, there's a dollar limit on what you can spend to renovate your office. You're a public servant. You're spending taxpayer money. It's like a $5,000 limit for you doing renovations for your whole office. Under no math could a $31,000 table fit under that threshold for renovating your office. And so this career official at HUD told him, no, you can't do that. You're a public official now. And so, obviously, they had to get rid of her. They got that career official right out of there, and they brought in someone more amenable to the ways and desires and furniture tastes of this new administration. They brought in someone who had worked on the Trump campaign. She's a lawyer. I believe she's from Queens. She had no relevant experience whatsoever, but she'd worked on the campaign, so they brought her in, and she took a look at that table, and the way she saw it, she actually saw that as quite a legitimate expense. She approved it. It is nice to have people like that you can bring in when you need them, right? And trust me, there are many instances in which you need people like that in the Trump administration. Behold Ryan Zinke. Ryan Zinke was a Republican member of Congress before Trump named him to run the Department of the Interior. Department of the Interior is not the world's most high-profile agency. One gets the sense, though, from Mr. Zinke that he would like to make that job as high-profile as he can. You might remember, he's the Trump cabinet officer who rode a horse to work on his first day on the job. He used taxpayer expenses, taxpayer funds to stop traffic in that entire part of Washington, D.C., so he could show up on a horse because he thought that would be cool. Once he dismounted and made it inside the building, Secretary Zinke soon made it a new practice at the Department of the Interior that a staff member would be assigned to, I kid you not, to run to the roof of the building with Secretary Zinke's personal flag, to run that up the flagpole whenever Ryan Zinke was at his desk. So everybody could tell from a distance, or maybe even from a passing plane, that Ryan Zinke was in the house. It has been a sort of hallmark of Ryan Zinke's political career that he has sometimes overdone it a little bit with the visuals. When he was running for Congress, he irked a lot of his fellow Navy veterans by putting the trident symbol for the Navy SEALs on the side of his campaign bus, which sort of implied that the Navy SEALs were endorsing him and his candidacy. That was further complicated by the fact that it only emerged after Trump nominated him to this cabinet job that what had actually derailed Ryan Zinke's career in the Navy was that he got in trouble. During his time in the service, he got in trouble specifically for chiseling the government on his travel expenses, which perhaps should have been a little bit more of a red flag than the Trump administration was prepared to notice when they nominated him for the cabinet. But they nominated him, he got through, and since Ryan Zinke got that job at the Interior Department, he has had, taxpayers pay for a private jet flight on an aircraft owned by an executive from an oil and gas company in Wyoming. after he gave a motivational speech in Las Vegas to a hockey team owned by one of his biggest campaign donors. He took that private jet ride from Las Vegas back to his house in Montana. He's also charged taxpayers to pay for his private jet flights to Republican fundraisers. And then there's the multiple private jet flights he charged to U.S. taxpayers for flights to and around the U.S. Virgin Islands, including for what sounds like a super awesome snorkeling tour. Taxpayers paid to fly him to that on a chartered jet. Ultimately, Trump Health Secretary Tom Price, who had to resign in disgrace, and then Trump's EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt, who had to resign in disgrace, they've sort of gotten all the glory for being the most flamboyantly, unsustainably corrupt members of the Trump cabinet yet. But, you know, Ryan Zinke has always been a contender. Do not count him out. His behavior in office led ultimately to the independent inspector general at the Interior Department starting 4 different simultaneous ethics investigations into Zinke's behavior since he's been running that agency. Now, if you're the Trump administration, that just seems like a terrible idea, right? An independent investigation of Ryan Zinke? Why would we allow that? Why are we allowing that? Why would we let that go forward? Hey, where's the dining set lady? What's she doing now? Couldn't we get her to fix this too? That is literally what they tried to do. 2 days ago, the Hill newspaper was first to report on an email from HUD dining set secretary Ben Carson, congratulating this woman who had worked on the Trump campaign and who worked in Carson's office. The email was congratulating her on her graduating from Ben Carson's office at HUD, which is where she approved the dining set. He was sending this email to let everybody in the agency know that she was on her way out because she was moving up, because she was getting what is actually a really serious and prestigious job. Ben Carson's email, again, first reported 2 days ago, announced that this woman from his office would now be leaving HUD and she'd be moving over to the Department of Interior to become the independent inspector general of the Interior Department. Wow, that is a big promotion. Now, there are obviously a few little problems with the idea of this person becoming the inspector general at Ryan Zinke's agency. Number one, she's the dining set person. She really is the person who was brought in to excuse Ben Carson's $31,000 table and the corruption and ethics and waste problems therein. That's not a great background for an inspector general who's supposed to ferret that kind of stuff out. Number two, she has absolutely zero experience in anything related to the Department of Interior. More importantly, number three, she has absolutely zero experience when it comes to investigations of any kind. So did you say there are 4 active simultaneous ethics investigations into Ryan Zinke? Well, this person will be perfect. Bring her in. So Ben Carson makes this announcement to his staff. We're so sorry to see you go. You'll be great at your inspector general job at the Interior Department. Congratulations. Meanwhile, the actual inspector general at the Interior Department, the one who's doing these 4 simultaneous investigations of Zinke, she learns about this when a colleague shows her Ben Carson's email. That's how she learns the news that somebody new is apparently coming on over to take her job. Now, to her credit, she basically refused to acknowledge that that was any real indication that she had been fired. She continued on, waiting to actually hear officially that she was out of a job. But for the past couple of days, where it looked like this was going was that the U.S. federal government under this president was going to hit yet another new low, right, when it comes to the tolerance of, and even the sort of celebration of just rank corruption, right? I mean, you've got a professional, experienced, independent inspector general running 4 active investigations into a Trump cabinet secretary. She's going to get fired. She's going to be replaced by someone with no experience whatsoever, except that this new person worked for the Trump campaign and has helped them cover up ethics scandals before. I mean, for the last couple of days, that looked like where this was definitely heading. But then, shame woke up. Democrats on the committee in Congress that oversees the Interior Department, They wrote to what is basically the Association of Inspectors General in the U.S. government. The reason an association like that exists is because being an inspector general at a cabinet level agency, it's a big deal. Inspectors general have a lot of power. It's a very serious job. It's a job for which independence and professionalism are seen as absolutely paramount. And because of that, to a certain extent, the inspector general community, they kind of self-police. They have an association. They try to make sure that these important, sensitive inspector general jobs only go to people who are capable of doing that kind of work, who have relevant experience, and who can do that work with unimpeachable integrity. So the Democrats, it occurs to them, hey, maybe we should write to the Association of Inspectors General and say, hey, the dining room set from Ben Carson's office, really? She's going to be an inspector general now for a cabinet agency? That's not actually how they put it. They put it this way, quote, the mere threat of replacing an inspector general when the head of the agency it oversees is under heavy scrutiny will send a signal to current and future IGs throughout the federal government that releasing unfavorable findings may threaten their job. Quote, it creates a permanent disincentive for the candor required for an effective IG and severs the independence that is the foundation of effective oversight over federal government waste, fraud, and abuse. So they send that off. And I know at this point you're thinking, oh, Democrats, that's cute, right? You're in the minority in the House, which means you don't have any real power. Republicans clearly do not care about this when there's a Republican administration doing it. Trump administration gets away with stuff like this and worse on a daily basis, right? Under the Trump administration, they have very quickly completely degraded any ideas or expectations that we have about corruption and abuse and nepotism and conflicts of interest. So, why bother? Well, you bother because sometimes it works. And in this case, lo and behold, shame makes an appearance in the Trump administration. I mean, kind of. They're not, of course, shamefacedly admitting what they were trying to get away with here. But they did get caught here. They got confronted about it. And now they have ended up climbing down. You might have seen this headline in the Washington Post today. Trump administration does about face on its own announcement that top aide at HUD would be Interior's watchdog. That's a lot of words, but it means they gave up on this scheme. I mean, the way they have decided to get out of this, to climb down from this, is Zinke's office telling reporters that this was never the plan. We don't know what you're talking about. Why do you think it was the plan? Oh, that Ben Carson email that said this was the plan? That was Ben Carson just screwing up. Zinke's office put out a statement today saying the email from Ben Carson was, quote, 100% false information when he said this woman from HUD was going to become the new inspector general. I mean, I think this is what shame actually looks like with these guys. Even when you get caught and you have to climb down, still pick a fight about it. Blame someone else. Pretend to still be on offense. But what they were trying to pull off with this inspector general switcheroo, they're now not doing it. So to the Democrats who pushed on this, this is one of those rare examples that shows that fighting over this stuff sometimes works. You can't win if you don't play, right? I mean, even when it seems futile, right? We are, I understand why it sometimes seems futile. We are in a new era where the president is retaining his private business interests and keeping all of his finances secret. And he's giving senior jobs to his kids. And he's hired cabinet officials and senior regulatory advisors who came into government service and immediately started making policy to benefit their own business interests, which they then lied about. I mean, it's exhausting, right? Just big picture. Imagine any other time in U.S. history when we would be heading into a congressional election while the president's campaign chair, deputy campaign chair, national security advisor, and longtime personal lawyer are all going to prison. They're all awaiting sentencing, even before this presidency made it to its first midterm election. We've never been in this dire a place in terms of ethics and criminality, and I'm including Watergate and Teapot Dome and everything else you can imagine. But what do we as citizens do about it? And what do we want our public officials to do about it? The solution can't be to, just lower the bar, give up your expectations, throw your hands up and accept, okay, this is how corrupt America is now. I mean, unless we want to go down in history as the generation that said it's okay for the federal government to become quickly more wildly and flagrantly corrupt than it has ever been in this country since our founding. If we don't want to be the generation that decided that was cool and we weren't going to peep about it, that means you do have to fight about it when you find out about corruption, even when you find out about some new element of it every day. You have to cry foul. You have to denounce it and put up a fight. Not because you're going to win every time. You won't. But because, A, we all have to answer for ourselves and our lives at some point, and you are complicit in it if you say nothing. And B, more practically, if you do choose to fight, every once in a while, you might win. And so tonight, the Inspector General's office at the Interior Department, which is still intact, they have started to release some of their findings on Ryan Zinke and his wife and their taxpayer-funded travel arrangements. There are still multiple investigations underway. Apparently, that Inspector General will now be allowed to stay there and complete that work.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.